Ramona Shelburne didn't just report a story. She detonated something the WNBA may not recover from anytime soon. This wasn't a leak. It wasn't a rumor. It was a bombshell. And the fallout? Devastating. Right now, nearly 80% of the league's players are without contracts. No teams. No certainty. No guaranteed future. A professional sports league, on the brink of its biggest growth era, is suddenly staring at something unthinkable, a season that exists on paper, but not in reality. What was supposed to be a power move has turned into something far more dangerous. Because when voices like Rich Eisen go on live television and say, the golden goose is getting more valuable, and somebody is holding a knife to its throat, you know this isn't normal negotiation anymore. This is escalation. Arenas are booked. The schedule is released. Fans are ready. But the rosters? Empty. And that's where everything changes. This is no longer just a labor dispute. This looks calculated, coordinated, engineered. A high-stakes standoff where both sides knew exactly what they were doing and did it anyway. Because what Ramona Shelburne revealed next completely reframes the situation. This didn't happen by accident. The players didn't just end up without contracts. They planned it. According to confirmed reporting, the Players' Union quietly instructed its members to sign one-year deals across the board. Not 2, not 3. 1 year, on purpose. Every contract synchronized. Every timeline aligned. Why? Because they were all aiming for the same moment, the arrival of massive new money tied to the league's exploding popularity, fueled heavily by rising superstars like Caitlin Clark. The strategy was simple and bold. Hold out now, cash in later. Together. Names like Breanna Stewart, Nneka Ogwumike, and Nafisa Collier, players who have seen the league evolve from near-empty arenas to sold-out crowds, were at the center of this movement. They understood the risk. They understood the timing. And they still chose to pull the trigger. But here's the part that turns strategy into crisis. When 80% of a professional league becomes free agents at the same time, you don't just create leverage. You create paralysis. No contracts means no teams. No teams means no games. No games means no league. Everything stops. The entire engine of professional basketball halted. And this wasn't spontaneous. This took months of quiet coordination, private conversations, strategic alignment between players, agents, and union leadership. A level of discipline rarely seen in professional sports. It was impressive. It was unified. It was powerful. But now, the question is unavoidable. Was it too much? Because the plan depended on one critical assumption, that the owners would fold under pressure, that they would panic, that they would rush to secure the future of a league riding unprecedented momentum. But they didn't. They held their ground. And now both sides are locked in a standoff, arms crossed, unmoving, while the clock ticks closer to opening day. No compromise. No resolution. No progress. Just silence and pressure building behind it. And the consequences? They're not being felt equally. Because while star players have financial safety nets, overseas contracts, endorsements, business ventures, the same cannot be said for everyone else. The role players, the rookies, the fringe athletes fighting for one of the final roster spots. For them, this isn't strategy. It's survival. They don't have time to wait it out. They don't have millions backing them up. They are caught in the middle of a battle they didn't design but may pay the highest price for. And the situation only gets more surreal. Because despite all this uncertainty, the WNBA has already released its full season schedule. Games are set. Dates are locked. Matchups are announced. But the players? Still unsigned. Think about that. A professional league publishing a full schedule without knowing who will actually play. Why? Because arenas don't wait. If you don't secure your dates, someone else will. Concerts, events, shows, anything that fills seats and pays the bills. So the league moved forward, not because it was ready, but because it had no choice. What we're looking at is something almost unheard of, a schedule for teams that don't yet exist in full form. A season planned around uncertainty. A product promised but not guaranteed. And this crisis is unfolding at the exact moment the league should be celebrating. A historic media deal. Billions on the table. Global attention rising. Everything was aligning for a breakthrough. Instead, the league is fighting to hold itself together. Because at the center of all this tension is one number. 30%. That's the share of revenue the players are pushing for. And on the surface, it sounds reasonable. Other major leagues split nearly half their revenue with players.
So why not here?
Because the reality is far more complicated. Unlike leagues that have been profitable for decades, the WNBA has spent most of its existence operating at a loss, supported by ownership groups willing to invest long-term in the hope of future growth. And now that growth is finally happening, both sides want their share. At the same time, with no one willing to step back. So here we are. A league on the rise, suddenly frozen. A historic opportunity, overshadowed by conflict. A season approaching without certainty. And a single question hanging over everything. Who blinks first? Because until someone does, the standoff continues. And the longer it lasts, the greater the risk that this moment, this golden opportunity, turns into the very thing that holds the league back. Or worse, breaks it. Caitlin Clark's rookie season in 2024 didn't just elevate the WNBA, it completely disrupted the ceiling of what the league was believed to be capable of. For years, executives had poured money into marketing campaigns, branding strategies, and social media pushes trying to capture mainstream attention, yet nothing truly broke through until Clark arrived. Suddenly, casual sports fans who had never watched a women's basketball game were tuning in, debating performances, buying tickets, and filling arenas across the country. Television ratings surged to levels the league had never seen, road games became sellout events, and the Indiana Fever transformed into one of the most watched teams in all of basketball. It wasn't gradual growth, it was a cultural shift, the kind that cannot be manufactured or predicted. And riding that wave of attention, the league secured a historic $2 billion, 11-year broadcast deal with major media giants, signaling what should have been the beginning of a golden era. But instead of smooth expansion, that moment of success collided directly with one of the most complex labor standoffs in the league's history. Ownership entered negotiations recognizing the momentum, reportedly offering significant salary increases and structural improvements, believing they were presenting a meaningful step forward. The players' union, however, rejected the proposal outright, holding firm on a demand for 30% of gross revenue, a figure that, while seemingly justified when compared to other major sports leagues, ran headfirst into the financial reality that the WNBA has not historically operated as a consistently profitable business. When the owners resisted, the union escalated, advising players across the league to let their contracts expire simultaneously, a move that turned negotiation into confrontation almost overnight. What followed was not just pressure, it was a complete system shock, as the majority of the league's talent pool effectively removed itself from active contracts at the same time. And this is where the human cost becomes impossible to ignore. The leadership driving this strategy, stars like Breanna Stewart, Nneka Ogwumike, and Nafisa Collier, are not operating under the same pressures as the average player. They have access to overseas contracts, endorsement deals, and business ventures that provide financial stability regardless of how long negotiations drag on. For them, time is leverage. But for the players on minimum deals, the rookies trying to secure one of the limited roster spots, and the fringe athletes whose careers depend on each season's paycheck, time is not leverage, it is a threat. These players are now caught in a standoff they did not design, absorbing consequences they are least equipped to handle, waiting in uncertainty while decisions are made far above their level of influence. Even figures like Adam Silver have publicly signaled concern, understanding that the timing of this conflict could not be worse. The league is under the spotlight of major broadcast partners. Expansion teams are preparing to enter the market, and a new generation of talent is arriving that could sustain the momentum Clark ignited. Yet instead of capitalizing on this moment, the league finds itself stalled, its future dependent not on growth strategies, but on negotiation outcomes. The core issue has never been whether players deserve increased compensation. Few would argue against that, but whether the strategy chosen to achieve it accounts for the fragile state of the league's ecosystem. At the center of everything remains Clark herself, the golden goose referenced so bluntly by Rich Eisen. Her impact was not incremental, it was transformative. She didn't just break rookie records, she shattered long-standing assumptions about audience engagement, driving attendance spikes across the league and pushing television viewership into unprecedented territory. Games featuring her drew numbers that rivaled, and in some cases surpassed, established benchmarks, forcing analysts, media outlets, and sponsors to reevaluate the commercial potential of women's basketball in real time. The league stopped being a niche product and became part of the broader sports conversation, capturing attention from fans who had previously been completely disengaged. But that kind of attention is volatile. Casual fans are not loyal to leagues. They're loyal to moments, personalities, and narratives. And if those moments disappear, so do they. That is what makes the current situation so precarious. If the upcoming season is delayed, disorganized, or visibly affected by the ongoing conflict, the influx of new fans may not wait around for resolution. They will move on to other sports, other entertainment, other distractions, and the league will be forced to rebuild that audience from scratch, a process that could take years. Coaches like Gino Orima have long emphasized how difficult it is to capture and retain casual interest, and how quickly it can vanish if momentum is disrupted. The WNBA does not have the luxury of time. It has a narrow window created by a unique convergence of talent, exposure, and cultural relevance. What makes the timing even more critical is the wave of talent entering or peaking within the league. Players like Paige Bueckers bring massive followings and star potential, while established names continue to elevate the level of competition and visibility. The infrastructure is in place, the investment is secured, and the audience is growing. Yet all of it is currently frozen, waiting for a resolution that becomes more urgent with each passing day. The logistical challenges alone are staggering. A new collective bargaining agreement must be finalized, expansion drafts must be conducted, free agency must unfold at an unprecedented scale, and teams must be assembled in compressed timelines that leave little room for thoughtful decision-making. Even under the most optimistic scenario, the ripple effects will be visible. Teams built in days rather than months, players adjusting to new systems without preparation, and a season that begins under a cloud of instability rather than excitement. Broadcast partners who invested billions are watching closely, aware that the product they paid for depends on the league's ability to deliver not just games, but quality, consistency, and credibility. Any deviation from that expectation risks not just short-term disruption, but long-term financial implications that could reshape the league's trajectory. And so, the situation stands at a crossroads. A league that should be celebrating its breakthrough moment is instead navigating one of its most fragile periods. A generation of players fighting for a larger share of the future is doing so in a way that may jeopardize the present. And at the center of it all is a single, pressing question. Can both sides find a resolution before the momentum that took decades to build begins to slip away? Because if they cannot, the consequences will extend far beyond one season, affecting not just contracts and negotiations, but the very foundation of the league's growth and the trust of the audience it worked so hard to earn. The deeper this situation goes, the more it stops looking like a standard labor dispute and starts resembling a high-stakes gamble where both sides underestimated just how fragile the moment really is. Because while the spotlight has largely been on money, percentages, revenue splits, and contract structures, the real story unfolding beneath the surface is about timing, leverage, and risk management in a league that has never had less room for error. The WNBA is not negotiating from a position of long-established dominance like the NBA or the NFL. It is negotiating from a moment of sudden growth, where perception is just as important as reality, and where momentum is still in the process of becoming stability. That distinction changes everything, because momentum can disappear far faster than it arrives. What Ramona Shelburne revealed didn't just expose strategy, it exposed a miscalculation in how both sides evaluated leverage. The players believed that by aligning contracts and creating a near-total free agency scenario, they would force urgency, essentially cornering ownership into accelerating negotiations under the threat of losing a historic season. And on paper, that logic makes sense. Remove the product and the business feels pressure. But the flaw in that strategy becomes clear when you consider the other side of the table. Owners are not operating on short-term emotional timelines. They are operating on long-term financial models. Many of them have already sustained years, if not decades, of losses while keeping the league alive. Their threshold for discomfort is fundamentally different. Where players see immediate opportunity, owners often see long-term sustainability, and those two perspectives rarely align cleanly under pressure. This is why the standoff has reached such a dangerous equilibrium. The players expected urgency. The owners responded with patience. And now both sides are locked in a situation where neither can easily back down without appearing to lose ground. It's no longer just about numbers, it's about precedent. If ownership caves too quickly, it sets a standard for future negotiations. If the union backs off its demands, it risks weakening its position not just now, but for years to come. So both sides hold their line, even as the cost of doing so continues to rise in ways that go beyond spreadsheets and balance sheets. Because outside the negotiating room, reality is moving forward whether they are ready or not. Expansion teams are waiting. Markets like Toronto and Portland were supposed to represent the next phase of growth, tangible proof that the league was expanding its footprint and deepening its relevance. Instead, they are sitting in a kind of organizational limbo, branding without substance, infrastructure without players, anticipation without clarity. These are not just symbolic losses. They are missed opportunities to convert curiosity into loyalty, to turn new audiences into long-term fans. Every delay chips away at that potential, turning what should have been a celebratory launch into a logistical headache. And then there's the broadcast layer, which may ultimately be the most consequential piece of all. The league's massive media deal wasn't just about money, it was about validation. It signaled to the sports world that the WNBA had finally reached a level of relevance that justified major investment. But those deals come with expectations, both explicit and implied. Networks are not simply buying games. They are buying reliability, consistency, and a product that audiences can trust will be there when scheduled. If that trust is shaken, even slightly, it introduces uncertainty into relationships that are foundational to the league's financial future. And uncertainty, in a business built on long-term contracts, is one of the most dangerous variables of all. Meanwhile, the internal ripple effects continue to grow. General managers, who are typically methodical and strategic in building rosters, are now facing the possibility of making rapid, high-stakes decisions under extreme time pressure. Coaches may enter training camps with incomplete or unfamiliar rosters, forced to build chemistry on the fly in a way that compromises the quality of play. And players themselves, regardless of which side they align with, are being pulled into a situation where preparation, stability, and performance are all at risk. The product on the court, which is ultimately what drives fan engagement, becomes a secondary casualty of a conflict that was never intended to reach this point. What makes this even more complex is the psychological dimension that rarely gets discussed openly. For years, WNBA players have fought for recognition, respect, and fair compensation in a system that often undervalued their contributions. That history matters. It shapes how current negotiations are approached and why certain lines are drawn so firmly. From the player's perspective, this is not just about the present. It's about correcting a long-standing imbalance. But from the league's perspective, the challenge is balancing that correction with financial realities that are only just beginning to shift in a positive direction. Both sides believe they are acting rationally. Both sides believe they are protecting the future. And yet, their definitions of future are not perfectly aligned. At the center of all of this remains Caitlin Clark, not as a participant in the negotiations, but as the catalyst that accelerated everything. Her impact compressed timelines. It forced conversations that might have taken years to unfold into a matter of months. It raised expectations among fans, media, sponsors, and players themselves to a level the league had never experienced before. And while that acceleration created opportunity, it also created pressure. The system was not fully prepared for the speed at which things changed, and now it is trying to catch up in real time. The danger, of course, is that in trying to maximize this moment, both sides may end up diminishing it. Because moments like this, true inflection points, are rare. They require alignment as much as ambition. They depend not just on growth but on stability, on the ability to deliver consistently while scaling upward. And right now, that balance is missing. Instead, there is friction where there should be coordination, hesitation where there should be momentum. And so the clock keeps ticking. Every day, without resolution, adds another layer of complication, another set of questions about how, if at all, the league can fully recover its trajectory in time for the season. Fans are watching, even if quietly. Sponsors are evaluating, even if privately. Broadcasters are monitoring, even if patiently. The outside world may not yet be reacting loudly, but it is paying attention. And in situations like this, perception can shift long before reality catches up. What happens next will not just determine the outcome of a single negotiation.